In today's transmission, we have an action-packed episode for you. We are going to be talking about Israel and all the latest developments with them. We're going to be talking about the National Guard and what was happening on our own soil. We're going to also be talking about the Charlie Kirk fallout, because there's even more stuff coming out that involves the alleged assassin and his grieving wife. We also have the government shutdown, and then we're also going to talk a little bit about our war in Venezuela. So all of that is on today's transmission. So first, let's talk about Israel, because Israel, and I think this is important to at least acknowledge, because I have seen a lot of things online where people are curious, is like, why are you talking so much about Israel? Why Israel? And you have to realize that when you peel back the layers, you look at AIPAC, you look at the influence that they have over our own government, we kind of have to talk about them, because you have to talk about what's going on and understand the big picture of how Israel is manipulating American policy, domestic and foreign. So once you understand that, then you understand the importance of talking about Israel and talking about how America really needs to decouple and at the very least examine and evaluate our relationship, our alliance that we have with Israel, because it seems to not be too much of a alliance at that. And to exemplify that, we're going to jump into some of these headlines today. The first one, you've probably seen this. There's been viral videos going around where an influencer recorded Bibi Netanyahu, Bibi the bully as I like to call him meeting with influencers and talking about how how this purchase of TikTok was super good for Israel. And if you remember, a long time ago, I believe it was in 2024, at the beginning of 2024, I told you that China was not the issue. China was not why this platform was being sold. And there was talks then, and then he goes into talking about how they need X. They've conquered TikTok, now they have to take over X. And he starts talking about how Elon's such a good guy, he's our friend, we need him on our team. And he's talking to these influencers. And here it is, it came out later, that even the Jerusalem Post posted this, where Israel is paying up to $7,000 per post to influencers to be pro-IDF, Israeli Defense Force. And this was a organization that was registered with FARA, which is good. I'm glad there's at least one Israeli thing that's registered with FARA. Marjorie, there it is. Marjorie Taylor Greene even came out and released a list of all of the influencers who are receiving payments from Israel to be pro-Israel. And so it really shows you that they are losing the propaganda war, if you will. And the only real support you see for them, they have to pay for it. Literally, they had to buy TikTok. And in TikTok, they even now made it illegal for you to post the juice box icon, because if you don't know, I know I have a wide demographic of followers here. If you don't know, the juice box, the emoji, is related to Jews, because they think juice is like Jews, juice. So then they put the juice box as an emoji. And so even if you just post the juice box, you'll get flagged on TikTok now and possibly suspended. I know people who have been completely kicked off TikTok and they got no warning, no understanding of why, but just permanently suspended. So I do highly recommend you delete TikTok. You don't use it. I think I might still be on there. I need to talk to my social media manager, and we'll probably stop posting on there soon. It's just it's a waste of time and energy. Or maybe once I get banned again, we'll stop posting or something. But I highly recommend following me on Instagram. That's the best way. Or sign up for the newsletter below. But the point being here is that Israel's paying people $7,000 per post. And you can do it up to 30 times a month. So think about that. You're getting $7,000 a day. People don't make $7,000 a day, and it takes a couple minutes to make a post. So I can understand why people would sell their soul for that, but hopefully, hopefully that wasn't you if you're listening to this, because there's a lot of tragedy. There's a lot of tragedy that is happening at the hands of the Israeli government as well. And, I think this is also an important time to even discuss. And I've been thinking about this a lot, where we have been able to identify And I think any sort of group has a radicalized faction a part of it. Whether it's the left, whether it's the right, whether it's Christians, whether it's Muslims, whether it's white people or black people, there's a radicalized portion of any sort of group that you want to put in a box or identify anything with. But one faction that we never really talk about are Jews, right? Because again, as I constantly talk about, it's not all of them. It's definitely not. But we have to have a way to, if you will, say when they've gone too far. Put a line in the sand of like, no, like this, you've just become a radicalized Jew, right? And I think Zionist is a good word of describing that, because it's usually a person who's Zionist usually believes that Jews are superior to others, which I think is a huge red flag. And I also know that there's a couple things in their Talmud that are very problematic for modern society. And off the top of my head, and if you're listening with kids, I highly recommend that you close their ears for this part or skip ahead, as this is going to be a little bit of a troublesome few seconds here to listen to. And so hopefully you're preparing yourself emotionally. But in the Talmud, and so these would be people who believe in these certain ideas, right? Number one would be that they believe that they're better than everyone. And number two, one of the most disturbing things that I've seen is that they believe that if a Jewish person has sex with a girl who is less than 3, they don't believe it to be a sin because the hymen will regrow. And I think that's one of the most disturbing things that I have found out. Furthermore, they talk about how if a Jew like sexually assaults or rapes a girl, it's the girl's fault for luring the Jew to have sex with her, and then it's punishable by death by the girl. Now, again, not all Jews believe this, but the ones that do believe that, we should consider that radicalization. We should at least consider that incongruent with Western and modern society. Yet I don't see anywhere in the news that this is even discussed or brought about. Nobody talks about how that's an issue within Jewish identity or Jewish culture. And I don't want to say that's Jewish culture or Jewish identity, because I know I probably shouldn't. We probably shouldn't say that that's a part of it, but that would be at least a part of the radicalized form of it. And so I think anyone who would ascribe to those ideas, we should, well, not really put in positions of power, to say the least. And so I think it's important for us to at least realize that, yes, every single group has a radicalized portion of them, which would include anyone who describes as Jew or Jewish. So I think that's just an important distinction that we need to understand and make and realize, look, as long as you're not subscribing to things that are barbaric or arcane or goes against the human spirit or goes against free will or things of those nature, then you can operate in society fine. We're cool. But once you start to do that, we need to sit down and have a serious conversation. We need to be adults in the room and be able to protect those who are, let's say, weaker than we are. So I think that's a really important thing that I hope gets discussed a lot more frequently within the mainstream narrative. But getting back to the topics that we have today, Bibi Netanyahu also met with President Trump, and they discussed a 20-point plan for peace in Gaza. And it's very interesting. I highly recommend everyone reads it. And what's kind of funny is as they were discussing this and coming up with it, Israel was still dropping more bombs, and more bombs specifically on hospitals in Gaza. So they didn't let up. They continued to create their little parking lot, if you will. And so the 20-point plan was interesting. I highly recommend you go look it up for yourself if you're interested. My high-level takeaway is that it is very obscure language. It feels to me as though there is language within it that is could be interpreted in many ways, and it could be used in evil ways as well. It's not very specific about things. It's very broad. It's very generalized. But the good news about it is that Hamas did agree that they need to release their hostages. They want to release the hostages. But they do want some things changes within the plan. And look, if I'm being down the middle, I would want some things changed too. I think one of the big things that I saw was this idea of what was it called? Demilitarization. So basically taking away the guns of Hamas, which to me, I think is kind of crazy that, especially believing in the Second Amendment as I do, I don't see that as being something that I would agree upon. I do think that you see Hamas as, and in the West, I feel like Hamas gets like a terroristic connotation, which it definitely has. October 7th was very brutal, very ugly. And at the same time, they should also be given this connotation as being the protectors, because who else is protecting Palestinians in Gaza? It's not the UN. The UN isn't protecting them. No other country seems to be helping out. So who is going to protect them? I don't like the idea of going on the offensive like they did on October 7th. I think that was a tragedy. I think that was terrible. But who's protecting them? How do they get any protection whatsoever? So my overall feelings on the 20-point plan is that a lot of obscure and vague language, which makes it difficult. It would make it difficult for me to say yes to personally. But it's great that they at least are agreeing to giving up the hostages. We'll see what happens. Israel has continued bombing in the meantime, showing how much peace that they want. So I think that was interesting. And, to kind of continue on this light of the atrocities that are being committed by Israel, we have the flotilla, which was supposed to be delivering aid to Israel, got intercepted by 13 ships. Over 200 activists, a part of the flotilla, were detained. Israel claims that they have documents that it's Hamas. Who knows how much truth that is? We can't believe Israel. I'm sorry, but we need a third-party investigation to look into that. I looked up the stuff, and it doesn't really make sense. It's very ambiguous. It seems like it could be faked very easily. The good news is that protests erupted everywhere. Insane protests. We're talking about Italy. We're talking about Rome. We're talking about in France and Spain, all over the world, Australia. And they were protesting this because this is the only thing that seemed to be at least trying to get aid to Gaza. And what makes this even worse is that they were intercepted in international waters, which is very illegal and actually, by definition, means that Israel engaged in piracy, not to mention kidnapping, which is crazy to me. And then even worse, there are reports coming out that Greta Thunberg, I believe, who is kind of like the social media activist for this, was made to crawl on the ground, berated by IDF soldiers, and forced to kiss the Israeli flag on the ground. Now, I think we still need some stuff to be substantiated for that to be true, but, from just first initial reports, I find that to be one of the... It's unfortunate. I mean, it's really unfortunate, I think, at a high level that the ugliness of this is continuing. We need strong leadership that across the world, don't get me wrong here, it's not just America, but strong leadership that is going to make a difference out of this. And I hope that leaders are starting to make that pivot where you have to do something. At some point, we can't just say, oh, Palestinian state, oh, this, oh, that, but have to actually take action. And hopefully people will keep protesting their governments until that happens. And I don't know if you saw this, I was kind of off the record, but Nepal had a very interesting overthrow of their government. They burned some buildings, but it was beautiful because they destroyed a lot of the monuments. And I don't want to get too deep down this rabbit hole, but they destroyed a lot of the government buildings and then forced their politicians to flee. The politicians fled, and then they started rebuilding Nepal the next day. They were aiding a lot of the wives of politicians who had fled. So I thought that was a very beautiful thing to look into if you're interested. But another good point, and I didn't really look too deep into this, but FBI Director Kash Patel decided that he's going to cut ties with the Anti-Defamation League. the ADL, which is the one that's responsible essentially for cancel culture. And more specifically, the ADL was set up as a branch of the Israeli government inside America to promote the Zionist agenda. So anyone who says anything remotely against Jews becomes an anti-Semite, you get canceled, TV, all the stuff. The ADL is really a big player in cancel culture. And so we'll see what comes of that. I'm interested what actually sparked that, because I know Kash Patel's wife has Mossad ties. So I'm curious as to how he's able to get away with that. But that'd be interesting to see. We also have the updates on the National Guard, where Oregon is actually suing the Trump administration for his deployment of the troops in Portland. And then we also had Trump deploying 300 more troops to Chicago, which I just don't get it. I feel like there's other issues. And speaking of other issues, it seems like Trump's trying to start a war with Venezuela now. So we might need some troops for that. Because Trump released a memo saying that we are, quote, in an armed conflict, end quote, with drug cartels in international waters, which, guys, to me, that's not very legal thing to do for many reasons. The main one being in the United States, in order to declare war, you need an act of Congress to declare war. So he's calling it an armed conflict. That's why he's not declaring it a war. But for all intents and purposes, this would essentially be a war with Venezuela in international waters, which I believe is very illegal, essentially what Israel did with the flotilla. And they're saying that the drug cartels are a national security threat, which I do fully support President Trump on. I agree with that. I think he's 100% right on stopping international and illegal drug importation into America. Where I disagree with him is on the way. Killing people in international waters, it's not right. There's no trial. There's no remediation. I mean, driving a boat with drugs is not a punishable offense by death. Not to mention the fact that they did not have a fair day in court. So all of that to me feels just intuitively very wrong. Very, very wrong. And to me, when I'm president, if confronted with this same situation, I would track the boats. When they land, you detain them, you investigate, you have the evidence of the drugs actually being there, and then you question them. Where are you going with this? Who is your operation? Where are you coming from? All of that. So then you can actually try them in court, and you can deport them if you want. Maybe we hold them here. I don't know. But the point is that just drone striking Venezuelans on a boat in international waters because, and allegedly, we don't have evidence of this, allegedly they have drugs. I find that very wrong. I think that's a very wrong way to approach this. And I think there's also like a diplomatic way that we could work with the Venezuelan government to stop this, instead of provoking and antagonizing them into killing their civilians in international waters. I don't see how this brings us closer to peace. I mean, maybe this is Trump's way of getting himself another little pat on the back of a peace. He wants his little Nobel Peace Prize. So one way he can do that is start a war with Venezuela and then create peace with Venezuela. And then he ended another war. I mean, it's just, that's politics for you. I could see him doing something like that. Let's bookmark that. If he actually goes and starts a war with Venezuela, and then in 6 months, he's like, well, I ended a war with Venezuela. So that's number 8. That'd be crazy. I could see him doing that though. But transition into our person, Charlie Kirk, because there's more drama with Charlie Kirk fallout, his assassination. As you know, Charlie Kirk was assassinated in early September, and Tyler Robinson, the alleged assassin, it's turning out that more and more as time goes on, he does not seem to be the alleged assassin for many reasons. But a huge one that came out is that it has been confirmed that Tyler Robinson was in an advanced CIA program. And to quote from these articles, the 22-year-old Utah native charged with aggravated murder in Kirk's death has been linked to Utah State University's Center for Anticipatory Intelligence, a cutting-edge program with deep roots in CIA expertise. As Robinson's defense team maneuvers for more time to sift through a mounting of prosecutorial evidence, whispers of mind control, MK Ultra, experiments, and, quote, pre-crime, quote, grooming echo through online forums and alternative media. And I'm telling you guys that every single day it goes on, this dude seems less and less likely to be the killer. And personally, my leading theory, the leading theory that makes the most sense to me, is the microphone theory. Now, we're not going to go down that whole rabbit hole. We don't have the time for it. But Tyler Robinson, the whole gun assembly, disassembly, the bag wouldn't fit the gun. All of it has the idea of like JFK written all over it. And if you don't know, Mossad was involved and the CIA were involved in the assassination of JFK. What I'm seeing here is the same exact pattern. I'm seeing a similar pattern here, is what I will say. And that feeling you get when you think about this, it feels the same too. And I know that's not evidential, but your intuition also, I believe, has a valid say in stuff like this. So I just find that entire thing crazy. I don't think Tyler Robinson is the actual killer. The entire story doesn't make sense. Kash Patel is covering something up, knowingly or unknowingly. I think he knows he is. And it's just, the entire thing just stinks. And so, you know, you can do your own research, or you can find out in 20 to 30 years that it was CIA and Mossad who ended up killing him. And to make things even crazier, Erica Kirk. Have you seen this? Have you seen this stuff with her? How she has all of these ties to Trump, being Miss Arizona in one of Trump's pageants. Her family has strong DOD and CIA ties, where her father actually helped set up one of the Iron Dome in Israel. And then the final one is that, and this is like the little asterisk, the little cherry on the cake. So she has the CIA, she has the DID ties, she has the ties to Israel, she has ties to Trump, of course. And the cherry on top, right, is the child sex trafficking. And what's crazy to me is that her Romanian angels, which were supposed to help kids, was linked to child sex trafficking. One of the head persons was convicted, I believe, or I'd have to look up the specifics, but I do recommend a video that Brandon Conceição made. It's on his Instagram for sure. I'd say go check that out, because that was a very powerful video that he created, showing this entire linkage of Erica Kirk to Trump, to the CIA, to Israel, and to child sex trafficking. And, you know, it sounds exactly like Epstein. All the same connections there. So make of that what you will. And then, to highlight this and to put all the pieces together, right, is that you have to realize Charlie Kirk had one of the biggest movements of conservative Gen Zers in America, if not the biggest, probably the biggest. So for him to start wavering on Israel, which was indeed happening, for him to start wavering on Israel is a huge no-no. Like, that would mess up everything for Israel. They would lose a huge part of their fan base, because you're not going to get the left. You have to groom the right in order for them to continue this propaganda war with Israel. But so with him gone, you need someone to replace him. Enter Brian Holohan. And everything about this kid, who's like, I don't know how old he is. He's probably between 18 and 20. His entire story is the legitimate, it has the bookmark tale of astroturfing. If you don't know what astroturfing is, it's essentially creating a fake grassroots movement around a person, an idea, an organization, where he has been just like this manufactured fame, where he's popping up on Fox News. Nobody's heard about him. He's now taking over for Charlie Kirk, doing like 10 stops in September and October on the Turning Point USA, all this. And what's kind of also interesting is that no one knew about him until now, a week ago. And as a freshman in college, he now apparently has time to tour, do a 10-month tour, a 10-stop tour, which is going to last 2 months. As a freshman in college, I'm telling you, you don't have time to do that. And then on top of that, he used Charlie Kirk. There's a tweet of his, I'm going to pull it up right now, but there's a tweet of his that just, it felt so wrong. And him using Charlie Kirk to catapult himself to fame. You know, it's a pretty long message, but in it, he's essentially talking about Happy Sunday. I want to sit down for a second to introduce myself. So that's what's crazy, right? Is that he's sitting down to introduce himself because he knows a lot of people don't know who he is. He literally says, it's okay if you haven't seen me before this week, but I'm definitely not a newcomer. See, it feels weird, guys. I'm telling you, it feels weird. I'm definitely not a newcomer. I started my podcast in the 4th grade at 11 years old because he was groomed from a young age to be able to replace anyone who went against him. Ready? Charlie and Candace were 2 of my first ever guests. Why would they go on an 11-year-old, just a random 11-year-old's podcast? Why? We want to just like reach the roots, but why this kid? Charlie and I exchanged numbers. We have stayed friends. We were texting just before his assassination. He came on my podcast a second time just a few years ago. Last year we met up. I'm good friends with him. I'm buddy. We're amazing. TPUSA. I'm doing this tour now to try to motivate young people. I'm getting nothing but hate from it. Look, I don't hate this kid. All right. I don't even know who he is, but all I'm saying is that this is a clear sign of astroturfing and you just need to be aware of it. Sorry, I said Brian Holohan. It's Brillin Holohan, but the point still remains the same, is that this guy, it's not legit. And I feel bad, but at the same time, it's like, it's not the way to go. I mean, it's just, he's being used and he knows he's being used. There's a video of him like on like a private jet saying like, hey, I'm 30,000 feet up. Like we're going on this tour. I'm so relatable. Look at me. And I mean, it's crazy talk. I mean, it's honestly just crazy talk. I don't know how else to put it to you guys, that this is not legit. It's 100% astroturfing. It's not organic. He was on Ben Shapiro's show. Like, it's just, we need to support Israel. They're our greatest allies, blah, blah, blah. Crazy stuff, guys. Crazy stuff. I mean, I've never heard of him. I don't think really anyone has. And you know, just hears like he's a part of the agenda, if you will. He's a part of the club, and he was the stand-in, and everyone sees it too. It's not even just me. You look at the comment section, everyone's calling it out. So I know I'm not alone on that one, but enough airtime for all of that. Let's get into a little bit other details, which we have is the government shutdown. But before we talk about the government shutdown, I do want to bring out a point that in Nigeria, there was a report that came out in August of 2025 by the International Society for Civil Liberties and the Rule of Law, a Nigerian human rights NGO, and they have estimated that jihadist groups have killed at least 125,000 Christians and 60,000 moderate Muslims in Nigeria since Boko Haram's insurgency began in 2009. The totals around 185,000 civilian deaths, with Christians disproportionately affected in targeted attacks on villages, churches, and farms in the Middle Belt and northern regions. Guys, this is all just evil. This is evil stuff here. And I mean, I just want to make a report on it because I know no one's really talking about it. A follower of the show brought it to my attention. You know, it's like, hey, there's evil happening over here. It's like, yeah, there's evil happening everywhere. And it doesn't make either of them right. But it is worth noting, worth being aware of, that Christians and even Muslims, for not being Muslim enough, are getting persecuted in Nigeria right now. And it's a travesty. And you know, the best thing I can tell you, especially if you're Christian, is start praying to Jesus on the throne. I got a picture of him back there. DM me on Instagram if you want the picture. I can drop you a DM. If you send me a DM saying, "Hey, I want to see a picture of Jesus on the throne," and I'll send you a DM of the picture. And we're starting to run a little long on this podcast, so I'll wrap it up with the government shutdown, and basically, not really sure what does this mean, right? What all does this mean? Basically, the government has stopped funding, so DoD or any government workers won't be paid. They could get back pay once it starts running again. And primarily, this dispute is over healthcare. Look, you know where I stand on it. I don't trust the Republicans or the Democrats to get us across the finish line to save our healthcare, to make it any better. So we'll see. It could be just all drama. Personally, I'm for it because it makes both of them look bad. Like, I'll be honest. I mean, I think if you're unable, it shows us how dysfunctional our government is. And so the fact that they're unable to discuss a budget, hopefully we don't raise the debt ceiling. Of course they will. but we should not be raising the debt ceiling. And in case you were worrying, because I know you might have been worrying about this, but don't worry, because Israel is still going to be funded for their ongoing genocide. Don't worry. They still have their own separate money to be allocated, and they will still be getting their money so that they can have missiles to kill innocent people. So I know that's what you were worried about, but don't worry. The government shutdown will not affect Israel. Only the American citizens who have jobs within the government. So, but hopefully it wakes us up to realize that government's inefficient. Our lives will probably keep going on the same way they have been. We'll just realize that neither the Democrats nor the Republicans are competent. They don't really care about people. I'm making a big generalization here because I'm trying to get out of this podcast. I'll be honest with you. I think we've wrapped up a lot of juicy intel on this. So thanks for being here, guys. I know that was a lot of stuff. Hopefully you got some good information. And yeah, go follow me on Instagram. It's probably the best place. I try to reply to all the comments I get on those videos. And yeah, comment on this video too if you found anything interesting. And with all that being said, I appreciate you guys. Thanks for being here. And if I don't see you in this dimension, I will for sure see you in the 6th dimension.